Hey YouTube, what's up? It's Steven, and welcome back. Alright, so in this video, I want to explore colorism, of course, as usual, right? That's been the theme for a while with my videos, but I want to explore more so in terms of black men, particularly dark-skinned black men and light-skinned black men. Who's the beneficiary when it comes to colorism? Like, who of those two groups, who benefits from colorism? Because I feel like this is something that is worth exploring, because when it comes to black women, it's pretty straightforward who benefits from colorism, both in and outside of the community, right? It's typically, the majority of the time, it is light-skinned women. But when it comes to black men, the lines get a little blurry, right? And that's because we have the aspect of being inside of our community, the black community, but also being outside of the black community within general society, or, general American society, right? So I just wanted to take a little moment and just, talk about this situation as I see it. All right. So to be pretty clear cut and to the point, I will say that in the community, it seems more so that dark-skinned men are the beneficiary of colorism, um, at least at this point in time, inside of the community. One is because there's like a lot of, in terms of numbers, dark-skinned men outnumber light-skinned men. Um, Also, the mainstream media helps to promote dark-skinned men. You can see them in a lot of times in televisions when they need a black man, they will go to a dark skin or a brown skinned black man usually, right? They don't tend to do that with the women for some reason, but with the men, they want you to know that this is a black man right here, right? No racially ambiguous mofos in the role of a black man, right? So the media helps when it comes to, you know, dark-skinned men having privilege within the community. Um, Also in the community, partially because of the media, black women put black men, particularly dark-skinned black men, on a pedestal, right? The darker the better. The darker the berry, the sweeter the juice when it comes to the black men, right? So usually in the community, I don't really see colorism negatively affecting dark-skinned black men inside the community, right? I don't really see that. Um, However, inside of the community, I'll say that lighter-skinned men tend to get the short end of the stick when it comes to colorism. They seem to be on the end that is being, I guess, discriminated against. I'm not sure if that's really the word, but I guess for a lack of a better word, we can go with that, right? Discriminated against because of the color of their skin inside of the community, right? Um, you know, Oftentimes, kind of like, let me see, how can I put this? In the community, when it comes to, women wanting a black man, it's there's certain features and a certain look that women go for, right? Not to say that, the light-skinned dudes don't get any play or anything like that, because at the end of the day, that's not true. Um, but when it comes to, like, specifically wanting a black man, right? Someone who, represents blackness, right? As many black women do, I think overall, the typical black woman prefers a black man. And to be fair, overall, I think the typical black man prefers a black woman as well. It may not seem like it because of the media promotion of interracial relationships involving black men, especially dark-skinned black men, but again, statistically speaking, black men and black women tend to go on to form relationships at a much higher rate than black men outside of the community. Just wanted to put that out there, right? But to bring it back, black women want, especially if they're, quote unquote woke, they want black men that represents blackness, right? And of course, the darker you are, the more you represent blackness. So, because of that, that kind of factors into like, the privilege that I think, I guess maybe, I don't know if privilege is the word, but the advantages that dark-skinned men have when it comes to colorism inside of the community, it seems to work more so in their favor. And I think that's partially why some dark-skinned men are a bit indifferent when it comes to, colorism against dark-skinned women, because they feel like, well, it ain't affecting me, which is shady. I will say that's really shady. I mean, just because the problem is not affecting you specifically doesn't mean that it's not a problem. It's like, again, we have to kind of think of like, if it's affecting one person in the family, then it's affecting the whole family, right? I mean, if like, your brother is on drugs, then that ultimately does affect the whole family, right? But some people don't think like that, and some people are a bit more just, self-centered, right? And that's the society we live in. We do live in a very self-centered society where we're more so concentrated on ourselves versus our communities, right? And as well, dark-skinned men tend to sort of even exert a little power within this situation inside the community, right? Because the community kind of is theirs, or at least partially. It's like the community is everyone's, but they, have the numbers, and plus the media promotion, and plus black women backing them to be able to do the fuck shit that sometimes some dark-skinned men do, right? Of course, this is not all, just putting it out there. Not all dark-skinned men do the fuck shit, all right? And as well, so when it comes to, dark-skinned men, I kind of feel in the community they tend to be the beneficiaries of colorism, So I think that's partially why they can sort of get away with saying some, slick foul shit to, light-skinned dudes. They usually don't do it to the women, though, unless they don't want to get with them. Then they'll say some slick shit, probably. But, to the dudes, putting out, the light-skinned dude memes, or saying some slick shit on, like, when you see a light-skinned dude, or even sometimes it may even get violent. I've heard recently on YouTube someone saying, like, a group of dark-skinned men stabbed, or, cut up this light-skinned dude's face because, he was getting a lot of attention from the women, And then they said the funny thing is, he still looked good with the cuts on his face. But that's the thing, too. You don't really tend to see that more so with the men, right? Because, it's a little different when it comes to men. But sometimes some men, some dark-skinned dudes, sometimes be feeling a certain way. Because if you're saying some slick shit, you feel a certain way. It's on the low, but you feel a certain way. And you saying that slick shit to sort of throw that little, kind of get rid of that energy that's in you, right? It's kind of like the law of conservation or the law of energy or something like that, where it's like energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred and changes into different forms of energy. So there you have it, right? That's a little science lesson for you guys, just in case. But in terms of light-skinned men, well, I say, before I get to light-skinned men, let's go to dark-skinned men outside of the community. I think outside of the community, dark-skinned men tend to perhaps be seemingly at an advantage. Seemingly, because of the media promotion, right? Seemingly at an advantage when it comes to light-skinned dudes. But perhaps when you start really looking into it, right, you know, then you get to see, okay, maybe the dark-skinned dudes aren't at the advantage when it comes to outside of the community, right? When we have to go out into the workforce. Let's see, other things. You know, in the grade school system, right? And how, you know, lighter skinned people are treated versus darker skinned people. Um, you know, when it comes to like politics and stuff, a lot of times they see like people, like if it's a dark skinned dude and a light skinned dude run a campaign against each other, it's gonna get ugly. It really is, because at one point or another, someone's going to bring up blackness, and someone's going to be like, well, this person is blacker than this person. This person's a sellout. Look at their education. That stuff comes up. All right. I'll say interactions with the police is a big one. Based on the victims, you know, the victims of police brutality, right? The black victims, especially. Like if you go down the list and start looking at them, they seem to have like a reoccurring theme in common, which is like, you know, dark skin. And I do believe like the darker your skin is, I feel like the more aggressive the police is with you. It seems like that, right? Not to say that lighter skinned folks don't have their issues with the police, because they do. I'm sure some light-skinned folks can tell you some stories. But again, looking at this list of victims, right, going down this list, it seems to be like, you know, the dark-skinned dudes are bearing the brunt of this. And I feel like, you know, they are like on the front lines when it comes to this like racial war we're in, right? They may not want to be on the front lines, but they are on the front lines when it comes to, you know, what we're dealing with right now. So I will say that that is a big disadvantage, right? You know, even the description, like black male, when people hear the description black male, there's a specific type of look that pops into their mind of a black male, right? And it's usually not the light-skinned black male. You know, one time I was watching the news and I did hear like, oh, black male, but they specified light-skinned black male. And I really tend to not hear that light-skinned black male thrown around in the media a lot when it comes to like, oh, someone committed a crime. You know, what's the description? Light-skinned black male. I typically don't hear that, but I do remember one time hearing that on the news, right? Usually when it is a description of a black male, they don't specify the skin tone. Even perhaps if there is a skin tone difference, right? I don't, yeah. But, you know, I suppose that's the disadvantage of being the face for your group, right? Because there's an advantage, there's advantages to your positionality, and there's disadvantages to your positionality, right? Because when you're the face, people go for the face, right? And I think when it comes to, you know, these racist KKK caveman cops out here shooting down these black men, that's the vision that they have in their mind. You know, that's the image that they have in their mind. You know, not to say that they ain't after other folks, right? But I'm just saying. So I'll say, like, inside the community, dark-skinned men benefit from colorism, but outside the community, they tend to bear the brunt of colorism, right? Tend to be at a disadvantage. But again, that doesn't seem to make them want to be more sympathetic to dark-skinned women's struggles with colorism, both in and outside of the community, right? But that's unfortunately, you know, another story for another day. You know, I could do a whole video on that probably. I probably shouldn't. It probably is not my place to do that video, but perhaps. I don't know. Okay, so let's talk about the light-skinned dudes. You know, light-skinned men. All right. So I'll say inside of the community, light-skinned men are at a disadvantage. We manage, but we're at a disadvantage, right? And honestly, I think we manage because of ish outside of the community, but I'll get to that later. But yeah, we're at a disadvantage. I do feel like I don't know. I feel like there's a certain slight like animosity that is thrown or given towards light-skinned men for some reason, both from the men, dark-skinned men and the dark-skinned women, and the light-skinned chicks want to jump in on it too. Keep it real, you know. Light-skinned chicks do not be having the light-skinned dudes' backs. You know, as a collective, you know, perhaps on an individual basis, yes, but as a collective, you know, no, you know, they're like, no, you know, I got mine. Sorry for you. um, but yeah, I feel like if women prefer light-skinned men, they're sort of shamed for it, right? And they're shamed for it by not only black men, right? You know, dark-skinned black men, right? But they're also shamed for it by black women, which I'm not completely sure why that is, other than, I don't know, maybe women wanting to have dark-skinned men's back. But particularly if you're a dark-skinned woman, I think you might want to rethink that a little bit, just because I'm like, okay, have people's back that have your back, right? Support those who support you. Oftentimes, I do see dark-skinned women giving so much support to, you know, dark-skinned men especially, and sometimes I don't see that being returned. Perhaps I'm missing something in the equation, you know, perhaps, you know, let me know in the comment section. Maybe I am missing something, but sometimes when you see this such situations, right, you know, these dark-skinned women be uplifting these men, especially dark-skinned men, to like this celebrity status, right, and being like their core fan base, right, then they run off with the, you know, racially ambiguous um, chick who's, you know, perhaps identifies as black, or even worse, you know, outside of the community. And even worse, like outside of the community to Rebecca, you know? And some dark skinned women do be feeling some type of a way about that, just because they feel like, well, you know, we shown so much love to you, supported you, you know, and it just seems like you don't really have that same love for us, right? But then, you know, the excuses come up like, well, you know, love is blind, and you know, it just happened. All right, you know, she's still black if she's like, you know, part black, right? Then the excuses come up. But again, that's another video for another day too. That's the thing. Like, there's so many topics within the topics to talk about, you know. But yeah, so in the community, black women are shamed for liking light-skinned black men. It still happens, you know, the relationship still happens, but you know, it's just more not stigmatized, but like you get more grief for it for some reason. Like, people kind of look at you a certain way and then be like, "Are you a self-hater? You know, do you hate yourself?" All that BS, right? um, but I say when it comes to the women, I feel like a lot of times the women are being approached by the light-skinned dudes, and some women just say like, you know, those are the men that approached them, you know. And then some dark-skinned dudes be like, well, dark-skinned dudes probably did approach you, and you just, you know, dismissed them. I don't know. You know, that is an individual thing, so I can't say yay or nay. All right. So yeah, I say inside the community. I say also light-skinned men are kind of like an easy target too in the community. And also, I'm not sure why we kind of get the target though. That's the thing though. I mean, we really don't be like, overall as a collective, we ain't really like, we ain't saying like fucked up shit about dark-skinned women. For the most part, we're not. Honestly, based on the media, I will say that probably more dark-skinned men have said fucked up shit than dark-skinned women. I will say even more so, more dark-skinned men have said fucked up shit about light-skinned women. Honestly, if you want to go down the list, you know, especially when they have some bad run-ins with them, right? But that's the thing too. Like, if you're a light-skinned person, male or female, and you kind of do some fuck shit, you messed it up for the whole skin tone. Like, dark skinned people stereotype the whole damn skin tone because of that one light-skinned person doing some fuck shit. um, you know, but I feel like, I'm not saying that. I think there's a certain, perhaps a slight maybe understanding between maybe the light-skinned dudes and the dark-skinned women, perhaps. I'm not saying that our struggles are exactly equivalent, because I don't think so. I think that dark-skinned women do have it probably the toughest in this situation. But I'll say that perhaps there's a common, you know, experience or a similarity that, perhaps the light-skinned dudes and the dark-skinned chicks can relate to and relate on in some instances. When it comes to outside of the community, I think that lighter skinned men are probably more so at an advantage. A lot of the first in our community, were done by light skinned black men, right? Like Thurgood Marshall, or I guess, what's his name? What's that dude's name? Frederick 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 Douglass. Um, who else? A lot of politicians, definitely, right? And some people are saying, well, it's the system, and I don't want to be a part of the system, and that's true. But it is good to have that option to say yay or nay. A lot of times, folks don't even have the option to really be a part of the system in terms like politics and stuff like that. You know. So sometimes I think in some senses or some situations, Colin Powell, right? Sometimes I think light-skinned men can be sort of the face of black men, but I don't feel like they want us to. I feel like white people, people who really run the show here, I feel like they don't want us to be the face of black people, and I think they set it up so that we are kind of not the face of black men, right? I think they want the light-skinned black woman to be the face of black women, but not light-skinned black men to be the face of black men. And I have some theories on why that is, but another video for another day. There's a lot more videos. Let's see. And as well, the workforce, being able to maneuver through the workforce and through society a little easier, right? Especially if you look a certain way, Because I say, like, skin tone does factor into how people perceive you, right? Especially if you have a certain personality that may come off a little maybe odd or weird, I think dark-skinned men who are kind of like more so maybe a bit more jokey might have a better advantage than the dark-skinned men who are not jokey, because I think the jokes and, that sense of humor sort of sets, people at ease, especially if you're like a really big, big and tall, really dark-skinned man, I feel like that personality trait would work to your advantage. And I think probably on some level, at least, those dark-skinned men in particular know that too. But what if you're not that personality type, right? So I feel like, in terms of the workforce, I think perhaps the lighter-skinned men are at the advantage. Oftentimes, probably if you really go through, who's at the top of this company, a lot of times you'll probably see like, it's a black person, but, if you start really analyzing the skin tone, then you're like, okay, they're kind of on the lighter side, right? So perhaps, also, police encounters, right? When we go to that list of the black men and women who've been, gunned down and shot down and murdered by the police, there are that, like, I'm sure there are probably a few on the list, but they're probably not the bulk of the list. Let's be real, right? It does happen, but it's like, if you look a certain way, I feel like the police treat you a certain way, right? Just in general, right? If you look like, some homeless dude, they're probably going to treat you a certain way, versus if you look like a rich dude, they're going to treat you a certain way, right? So I think overall, I think in terms of light skinned men benefit outside of the community more so than inside the community. And I feel like partially that's the reason why I think maybe dark skinned men and light skinned men have a better rapport with each other. Not to say that, light skinned chicks and dark skinned chicks can't, chop it up and be friends and whatnot too. But I think when it comes to the, relationship and the dynamics between dark skinned men and light skinned men, I think is a little better because that, dark skinned men do have a space, right? They have something that they kind of like a space of their own, a way to benefit. So it's because if it was like both light skinned dudes benefiting in and outside the community, I think there would be a more friction and more animosity and more resentment from dark skinned dudes. And also, I feel like because of this difference, right? I feel like dark skinned dudes can kind of get away with, kind of like going after light skinned dudes in a certain way because light skinned dudes do overall benefit from colorism outside the community, right? And we ultimately, outside of the community, in the situation that we're in, counts more than inside the community because we tend to go outside of the community a lot more, out for survival, right? Oftentimes we gotta go outside the community in order to survive, right? So I feel like dark-skinned men are in a position where they can kind of say some slick shit, really say some foul shit to light-skinned dudes, and not really be checked on it at all, really, because it's like the underprivileged going after the privilege, right? It's kind of like if a black person says some foul shit about white people, But if on the reverse, like if the light-skinned dude was saying foul shit about like dark-skinned women, light-skinned women, dark-skinned men, like people were kind of really, I feel like the outcry would be strong. They would be just going in and just checking that dude and just letting him know what's up, right? But with dark-skinned dudes, I don't know, I feel like sometimes we let them as a community slide with saying some things that they shouldn't, particularly when it comes to dark-skinned women, because I feel like they get the brunt of it. I'm not really advocating for myself in this particular situation or like light-skinned dudes, more so when it comes to the dark-skinned women. And also, like, to prevent light-skinned dudes from complaining, they come up with, they help they start to, perpetuate that stereotype, like, oh, being an emotional light-skinned nigga, right? So that's like also to kind of like shame you into, just shutting up about it and not complaining about it, because you don't want to, especially as a dude, you don't want to be coming off as like some emotional dude all the time. So you just perhaps to just stay quiet about it and whatnot. So that's another tactic too, right? Because let's be real, there's some emotional dark-skinned dudes too. Come on. Some dark-skinned dudes be up in their feelings when they privileges and they stuff be, when their toes be getting stepped on, right? But they kind of want to shame like the light-skinned dudes, and especially the dark-skinned women for speaking out. That's where when it comes to dark-skinned women speaking out, oh, you're bitter, you're just angry, you're jealous, those things, right? That kind of sometimes try to shame you into being silenced because you don't, the dark-skinned woman already gets it bad enough as it is, so she don't want to bring more stigma to her and stuff. So she's like, I don't want to come off as like, jealous, bitter, or angry, right? So that's why some dark-skinned women do just kind of just keep to themselves and just take it and just endure silently in pain. And sometimes some dark-skinned women will go after other dark-skinned women for speaking out. Like, oh no, I never been through that, even though they probably have, and they just don't want to be like, no, I'm not that type of dark-skinned woman. No, I never been bullied because I'm dark-skinned. I never had anyone tell me I'm pretty for a dark-skinned woman, etc. But yeah, I guess I can bring this video to a close. So thanks a lot for watching, you guys. Feel free to comment. Feel free to subscribe. Thumbs up. The feedback and support are extremely appreciated and also extremely needed too, because feedback in this situation, it really helps to generate a dialogue and to understand and learn about other people's perspectives, struggles, viewpoints, etc. Right? So thanks a lot for watching, and thanks a lot for the support. Adios and goodbye for now.